last month, IATA, that's the industry body, warned that aircraft financing will be costlier and tougher this year. Well, joining us from Singapore is Wolfgang Driese. He is chief executive of DVB Bank. It is a company which specializes in transport finances to Asian carriers such as Korean Air, China Airlines, and indeed Singapore Airlines as well. So this is becoming a bit of an issue here. Now, tell me something. How much do you think this is hurting airlines in this part of the world to begin with?
I think the crisis will hurt Asia as well to a certain extent because the positive thing is that we have much more regional travel in the meantime. So on the passenger side, I'm not so much concerned. If you look at the latest statistics, where the suffering was really coming from was on the cargo side. We had a drop in September of 6% in Asia cargo side, which is a reflection of the lower demand in Europe and to a certain extent in the US as well.
So, I mean, how much pain will carriers really have? And, you know, which are the ones which are going to actually feel it more? Is it going to be these low-cost carriers? Some of them have these incredibly big expansion plans here, or some of these legacy full-service carriers?
I think the story will be all of the time that the legacy carriers will always have some troubles if they don't really can market them into a segment where they are not so price sensitive. On the other hand, during the crisis that we have seen a certain shift on the business side away from business class and first class, so there is at least a 20% shift into economy. So to get up market is also not very easy. And then you have some new competition with aggressive strategies from the Middle East towards Asia and Europe, which again for the legacy carrier will be a challenge, even for prominent names like Singapore Airlines or Cathay Pacific or the Lufthansa and the like. So I'm much more optimistic on the growth strategy on the low cost, as long as they are low cost and not just low fare.
Right. Well, you know, when we look at these then full-service carriers, there's been a pressure out there for them to actually get together, for them to merge. We've seen a bit of this consolidation take place in the US already, and indeed Europe's been going that way. Will it happen here too?
I think in the long term it has to happen. But I think there is a lot of national pride to have your own flag carrier. There are legal issues still hindering mergers across countries. So in the long term it will happen. Short term I'm not so optimistic.
Right. Well, let's just take a look also at what's been going on in the rest of the world. And when we talk about legacy carriers, I want to just keep the theme there. AMR, the parent, of course, of American Airlines, bankruptcy protection for that one. How does that really play out when it comes to plane orders? They say that these plane orders are going to be safe, but can they really be?
I think there will be, because there is a need for the American airlines overall, but for the American in particular, because they haven't ordered for quite a while to get latest technology to save cost. Because you have to notice that fuel alone over the last 12 months have increased by 35%. And that means that the cost base of an airline has increased by 10%. So you have to do something to get your old stuff, the old MD-11s and other of older maturities out of your fleet and get new aircraft which are much more cost efficient if you want to continue to compete with this huge competition, in particular in the North American market.
Yeah, but you talk about cost efficiencies, though, and then we're going back to the original point of talking to you, and that is, of course, financing. The cost of that financing surely is increasing as well. So does that put even additional pressure on these airlines?
The cost of financing is already relatively high as long as the refinancing cost of the banks will remain as they are, and there is unfortunately no hope that the interbank market will drop the funding cost for the banks. That means that also for the borrowers will be quite costly, but we also have to see that the overall cost, if we take into account how low the US dollar LIBOR rates are still reasonable. So I think we only will see the problem, one, if and when interest rates overall will move up. The margin which the bank makes has not changed dramatically. It is just that we have to see that the availability of funding is a larger issue, because many of the traditional aircraft finance banks have disappeared, in particular from Europe. And when you see the overall pressure on banks to reduce balance sheet, there will be more banks dropping out of this particular area because it's a niche. And therefore there are only very few like DVB who can do this constantly.
Yeah, Wolfgang, I just wanted to see the impact, though, that this does have on the industry as a whole. Does it mean that when people are looking at whether they purchase planes or lease them, it pushes them in the direction of leasing rather than buying outright?
I think you have seen in the past already that leasing becomes more and more popular. It gives you much more flexibility. It's not just the finance cost, because if you finance yourself or through a leasing company will not economically make a lot of difference. What it gives you much more flexibility to get rid of excess capacity if you have a higher portion of your fleet leased.
Wolfgang Driese, thank you very much indeed for joining us from DVB.